Yo, peace, greetings, Robert. So today we're going to talk about real-Asian-Ships, relationships. Soul Rising album in stores, by the way. You can pull it up on any streaming service or go to samurai blackmusic.com, grab a vinyl, grab some merch, and grab the streaming links there. Link in the description. So, relationships, and I spelled it that way for a reason. REAL dash Asian dash ships. We're gonna break that down a little bit. When I was in elementary school, um, I remember I had this friend. I don't know, like third, fourth, fifth, sixth grade, somewhere around there. I had this friend named Raul. Shout out to you, Raul, if you're still out there. Um, and like a lot of my friends in grade school, we drew affinity towards one another off similar interests. So, it might be, because we both really ball, or, we both would sit at the same lunch table, or we would both, be in the same classes. We would laugh at the same things, etc. This is really what constituted all it super really took to constitute his friendship in childhood. Things were so much simpler back then. But one thing I was thinking about recently was, okay, so Raul and I really, I used to really, really enjoy playing basketball back then, and it's still something that I enjoy. I just don't really get a super lot of time to play these days. But a lot of our friendship and our kinship was built on the basketball court. Raul, he was like a Puerto Rican kid from New York. What's up, Aiden? And Raul didn't really have, he was really short, right? Even, in grade school or elementary school, as it were, he was much shorter than a lot of the other people. But he had handles. Even for us to just be like 10 years old, he had really good ball control. So this worked out and balanced really well for me because I tended to be, if I played basketball, it's kind of like a all-around player. And it's always been this way. I could, kind of position myself as like a small forward to where I could get in the post, or I can, play point guard, play guard, go shoot. I could play defense, all that kind of stuff. So needless to say, me and Raul used to work very well together in our elementary basketball games. Now, what came to pass is, after we graduated, or whatever you want to call it, from elementary school and went to middle school, because of my level of academics being beyond what Raul's was at the time, because he wasn't really a very studious student, so to speak. He wasn't really as engaged in academics as I was. So because of this, we ended up getting separated. We didn't have any other classes together. We ended up going to the same middle school, but he was taking his classes, and I was pushed in gifted studies and honors classes and all that kind of stuff. And I remember I ran into him like sometime, I think maybe in eighth grade, like first semester of eighth grade. And I ran into him, coming out of the bathroom. And he's like, "Oh, what's up?" He called me by my name. Now, before that, I walked past him a million times in the hallway. And, he pretended like he didn't see me. This time he saw me. He still remembered my name, all that. Said, "What's up?" Pat me on the back. And lo and behold, when I get out of the classroom and back to my class, I realized some shit like that. But I realized he had put a sticky note with a "kiss me" sign on the back, like how they would do like a kick me sign. He put a fucking sticky note on my back. So like, oh wow, you're not my fucking friend at all. What was that about? I thought we used to be crew. So, as time goes on, obviously these kind of experiences, like, they fade off to the wayside as you get older and older. But this was kind of like one of my earliest lessons and examples that sometimes the things that you think are relationships or friendships are not really real. And so this was kind of like, even though it was a very soft lesson in retrospect, like I wasn't like crying that he put a fucking kick me sign on my back and I thought we were cool in elementary school, middle school, he switches up. No, that's gonna happen. And I knew that at that time. But it made it clear to me, oh, okay, we're no longer friends. Wow. Right? So I'm in 8th grade and I'm contemplating this. I'm like, what happened? Like, I never did anything wrong to him. When we came out of elementary school, we were still cool. We see each other at the park every now and then, that sort of stuff. What actually happened? Why he switch up and he put a kick me sign on my back? And then I realized, just kind of looking at the trajectory that I was taking and he was taking, at least, for what mattered at the time in school, my trajectory was very heavily academic and scientific. I took a lot of science classes, science research, and all these things, even in middle school. So, and I was in all honors classes, gifted studies, advanced placement when I got into high school, all that shit, you name it, dual enrollment, everything. He wasn't doing any of that. He was just kind of moving along with the program, being pushed along through the classes that they were telling him to take. He wasn't able to go sit down with the guidance counselor and, decide whether he wanted to go this track or this track, or decide if he wanted to tailor his academic experience so that he would be eligible for this scholarship or this one. I options. I met with my guidance counselor like every fucking week, especially when it came to like junior and senior year. I was very familiar with that, and administration, staff, all that stuff, they're very familiar with me. All he could really be known for is playing a little bit of basketball. He was jealous. And this was the issue. Now, he would never say that. Even probably to this day, he probably wouldn't say it. But I know that's what it was. And I didn't even realize it until I got that kick me sign on my back. Right? So, as you progress through life, you'll kind of tend to realize that, like, you'll go into certain spaces and you'll become comfortable in certain areas and certain communities and environments for certain periods of time, and things will be great. You might find 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people that you really feel like you connect with or you click with. But at the end of the day, on the same token, you have to realize that not everybody has the same objectives as you. Not everybody has the same, I heard it said, not everybody has the same mission as you. So while you're, buddy, hee ha ha, and cracking jokes and spending time talking and sharing all your hopes and dreams with these individuals, what you'll find is oftentimes they may have an entirely different agenda. And if you don't fit into that agenda, they will completely switch up on you. Like, they'll completely act as if like you really did them harm. I remember there was this time I had a quote unquote friend that was this girl lived in New York. And we spent a lot of time, talking on the phone and all this kind of stuff, etc. Just friends, just friendship shit. Talking about relationships and, aliens and all the kind of things that friends would talk about, right? So I remember one day, something came up within the community that we were in And she wanted me to lie for her. Like she kind of posed this question, in front of others, and she was asking, like, oh, Samurai, you were there, you remember this and this happened, right? I said this. Now, it's not really in my nature to lie. I'm not really big on that shit. So I said, no, that's not what happened. It was this. And I don't know. It didn't even fucking seem like a big deal. I didn't understand why she was trying to lie or get me to lie with her. But it was a fucking big deal to her. She literally, essentially cut me off after that because I wouldn't lie for her. Sometimes it's things that are embedded in people, and if it's not embedded in you, then they'll consider you an enemy. No matter how much you've been there for them, no matter what experiences you shared, no matter what type of hopes and dreams were shared, any of these things, it'll just be that. So you kind of like, you can't really take offense when that happens. You kind of just have to like kick back and like look at it and realize it for what it is, and just be like, oh, okay, that's what it is. All right, there, hold on one second. All right. Sorry about that. Had a message come in from my team. So my point is, like, when you really get to like start figuring out who you are, what you're about, what your morals and principles are, what you're willing to do, what you're not willing to do, what your objective and your goal is here in this realm, and you're walking in that path, right? Understand that there's some people that won't be, but they'll end up crossing your path, and they might really go out of their way to try to align themselves with you and try to, befriend you and what have you. You have to be very careful about this without screening people, because I know a lot of people, especially a lot of good-natured people, they'll experience this, and then they'll find somebody that's seems super happy and excited to connect with them and all that kind of stuff, and they'll get blindsided and not actually look at the character of that individual that they're speaking to. They won't dig, like you don't know them, so there's no reason to be trying to soul bond with somebody that you don't know and you haven't had the opportunity to even get the chance to know. That's a red flag when somebody does that. And I mean this for all sorts of situations. Business is business. Okay, that's fine. You got to do what you got to do with that. Set your boundaries and terms with that. Follow Bushido Instincts on Instagram and on here, for kind of my takes on that. But when it comes to friendships, when it comes to relationships, 9 times out of 10, if somebody attaches to you very, very quickly without actually screening to see who you are, let alone you figuring out who they are, that's a red flag. It's not a good sign. That's not a real-ation-ship. It's not real. And when you analyze this and you pay attention to this closely, you'll recognize that these circumstances, these situations, chances are 9 times out of 10, they'll fly off very quickly. They'll take off very quickly from the harbor, from the dock. Like they'll fly off like a fucking rocket ship. Those are relationships. They'll fly off like a fucking spaceship, like a UFO blasting off. Like it'll be in and out so quickly, but they will kind of sap and absorb so much of your energy that it's kind of flabbergasted, especially for a short period of time. You'd be like, man, I've never gotten this close to somebody in 2 weeks as I have with this person. And then all of a sudden, they show their true nature, and they call themselves exposing you, or they call themselves cutting you off, or they block you, or they cuss you out, or whatever the fuck it is. And you're like, damn, okay, that wasn't real in the first place. They just flew off. It is something to consider. Now, on the other end, there are real relationships, and these are the ones that are tested by time. Sometimes you'll feel it, you'll feel the resonance early, but it's something that, like, as you go through certain trials with this individual, certain difficulties, oftentimes good times and bad times, and even one thing that I would suggest, especially as you start to kind of get more centered and secure in yourself and knowing who you are, if you um, test them just a bit, nothing crazy, but just, all right, I have this and this criteria, let me see what they're going to do in this situation. If you do that in these circumstances, you'll get closer and closer to finding people who are you're actually supposed to align with. All right, sometimes it'll feel like true family, and it'll feel like family even though they're not related to you, or you may find this in a loved one, and a lover, what have you, a mate. But the key is to actually, as some would say, test the spirit with the spirit, and have patience through it. Bear patience through it. Like, don't rush it. Things will really fall naturally when it's intended to be a certain way. And again, this goes for relationships, friendships. I wouldn't necessarily say business relationships, because for that there is a element of organicness in it, but on the same token, you gotta kind of push the button if you're the operator, right? So let's just say for friendships and relationships and that kind of stuff, there is an element in it that really make it flow. It's called resonance, right? So you got to make sure that you resonate with that individual. But for those who try to force that resonance, for those who move very, very quickly, like some of these scenarios that I described earlier, be very mindful of this. That's not a real relationship that's going to take off on your ass really quick. You might end up with a light pocket or a light mind. Be careful. Anyway, so I just wanted to pop on about this. Again, Soul Rising's in stores. You can check it out on any streaming platforms. Go to SamuraiBlackMusic.com, hit the link in the description, and you can buy vinyls, you can buy the MP3s directly, all that kind of stuff. Make sure you subscribe.